Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. And if you're joining us from other parts of the world, good morning or good evening. Welcome to the forum entitled Innovation and Intellectual Property Prospects in 2021 and Beyond. I'm your MC today, Li Huan. 尊敬的各位来宾，现场以及线上的媒体朋友们，大家好！欢迎您参加这场名为“知识产权保护科技创新的前进引擎”的论坛。我是今天的主持人王丽欢。Today, we're going to witness the release of Huawei's white paper on innovation and IP 2020, and field experts here will also be sharing their insights on innovation IP, the current state of that, and also the prospects. 那今天呢，我们将见证华为创新与知识产权白皮书2020的重磅发布，同时各领域的专家将在这里分享他们关于创新、关于知识产权保护的一些真知灼见。This event is broadcast live in 9 languages worldwide, and we have 200 media outlets as well as partners, analysts, and IP experts from around the world joining us at the moment online. Welcome to you all. 本次活动呢，将以9种语言在线上进行同步直播。我们有200家媒体以及来自世界各地的合作伙伴、分析师、IP 专家在线上加入我们，欢迎大家。So the first segment, we're going to feature opening remarks from Sir Francis Gurry, former Director General of the World Intellectual Property Organization, WIPO, and Dr. Song Liuping, Huawei's Chief Legal Officer. 今天的第一部分呢，我们将听到来自世界知识产权组织 WIPO 前总干事 Francis Gurry 先生和华为首席法务官宋柳平博士致开幕词。We begin with remarks from Sir Gurry, who joins us from Geneva. Under his leadership, WIPO streamlined the international patent and copyright systems and ensured that IP systems serve their fundamental goal of encouraging innovation and encouraging creativity worldwide. 那首先要致辞的是 Gurry 先生，他从日内瓦加入我们，在他的指导之下呢 ，WIPO 解决了知识产权中一系列最为紧迫的问题，并且确保知识产权的系统是服务于他，鼓励创新、鼓励创造力的这样的一个根本的目的。So Gurry。Welcome to join us online. 那 Gurry 先生呢，将在线上来加入我们。我们请看大屏幕。
Distinguished guests and dear friends, I am delighted to have the opportunity to participate today in the Forum on Innovation and IP Prospects in 2021 and beyond. This is a major event which brings together 3 of the pillars of the contemporary world economy, namely innovation, standards, and intellectual property, or IP. Now, innovation. Much, of course, has been said about innovation in recent times, and so it's not necessary to dwell for too long on its advantages. Historically, we know innovation has propelled the development of higher living standards and improvements in the quality of life for humanity. In the contemporary world, innovation is the key to competitive edge for enterprises, and it's the key to economic success and prosperity for countries. It's also essential to the maintenance of our well-being, as we have witnessed with the COVID-19 pandemic, where we have seen a number of effective and approved vaccines developed in record times, and which have become essential tools for the management of the pandemic and the crisis that it has caused. Innovation, of course, requires massive investment of human and financial resources, especially in a world of increasingly complex and sophisticated technologies. Around 2.3% of global GDP is invested every year in research and development, the wellspring of innovation. And that's just the average. Many countries, individual countries, invest a much higher percentage of GDP in research and development. Now, IP, intellectual property, provides an essential incentive to investment in research and development. It allows the innovator to recover investment in research and development by protecting the competitive advantage that innovation confers from commercial exploitation by others. Statistics illustrate that illustrate the importance that enterprises and research institutions attached to intellectual property. In 2019, around 3.2 million patent applications were filed worldwide. And when we look at the last 2 decades, we see that the rate of growth in intellectual property applications globally has far outperformed the rate of growth of the world economy. Huawei is a world leader in innovation. In 2020, Huawei topped, once again, the list of the largest filers of international patent applications under the Patent Cooperation Treaty. It filed 5,464 international patent applications, and that was nearly twice the number of its nearest competitor, the second-placed top filer, which was Samsung Electronics, which filed 3,093 applications. Now, since 2008, when Huawei first topped the list of largest filers of international patent applications, Huawei has come out in first place in every year except for one, which is an extraordinary performance. And all of these inventions for which patent applications are made are reflected in leading and innovative products, services, and infrastructure that's made available by Huawei throughout the world. Now, in an interconnected and globalized world in which innovations appear in the marketplace at an accelerating pace, it's important for consumers to know that they can rely on the functionality of new technologies that are coming into the marketplace. And likewise, it's essential that innovations, especially in the field of telecommunication, are interoperable. Interoperability ensures global connectivity, enabling economic, social, and cultural interactions throughout the world. E-commerce was already expanding at an extremely rapid pace prior to the COVID-19 pandemic. In fact, one estimate puts the value of global e-commerce in the year 2018 at some $25.6 trillion. Now, the sanitary measures of confinement and travel restrictions that have been necessitated by the management of the COVID-19 crisis have accelerated the growth of the digital economy. It's transformed retail sales, of course. It's enabled social and business contacts to continue despite the absence of travel and the restrictions that have been imposed. And it's allowed, for example, artists and performers to connect with audiences despite the absence of concerts and other physical events. The arrival and deployment of 5G will enhance these digital possibilities in all of the areas that I've mentioned and others. Now, standards are consensus-based rules setting out the specifications and procedures for products, processes, and services. And they are the means by which reliability and interoperability can be achieved most efficiently and most comprehensively throughout the world. And in the digital economy, they are indispensable for ensuring connectivity and interoperability on which the new economy relies. Standards aim to provide the best available solutions for reliability and interoperability. And so naturally, they often cover or include within their specifications innovations for which patents have been applied or granted. And this leads to a tension between, on the one hand, the incentive to invest in innovation, which is provided by patents, and which restricts the commercial exploitation of the innovation by third parties, and on the other hand, the desire for the widespread adoption of the standard and use of the standard to ensure reliability and interoperability throughout the world. Now, this tension is managed by procedures that have been developed by standard-setting bodies throughout the world for standard essential patents, or SEPs. The procedures typically envisage that the patent owner agrees to allow its patents to be licensed for use by third parties for the purpose of applying the standard, being able to use the standard. And in best practices, patent owners must make such licenses available on fair, reasonable and non-discriminatory terms, so-called FRAND. And this promotes the widespread adoption of the standard, promoting in turn reliability and interoperability. It allows for fair competition amongst rivals or competitors, and it returns value to the innovator. Today, Huawei, a leading innovator in digital communications and technologies, as a consequence of its firm commitment to investment in research and development and to innovation, the pursuit of innovation. So today it is unveiling the rates that it intends to apply to 5G licenses. Now, this is a major step towards the management of the tensions that I mentioned, of the differing public policies which are inevitable, the policies promoting innovation, connectivity, interoperability and fair competition. And it's also a major step towards the deployment of 5G globally, which will give rise to enormous possibilities in every sphere of life and will make possible or enhance social interaction, the distribution and consumption of cultural products and services, cyberkinetic business models, artificial intelligence, automated vehicles, the Internet of Things, virtual and augmented reality, and the vast universe of possibilities that is being unleashed by digital and telecommunication technologies. So it's a very exciting day for us all.
Thank you so much, Sir Gary, for your insights about IP, about innovation, also the value of standards, as well as the FRAND principle. 非常感谢 Gary 先生跟我们分享的关于创新、关于知识产权的保护、标准的价值以及 FRAND 原则。Next up is Dr. Song Liuping from Huawei. Dr. Song is a member of the supervisory board at Huawei and concurrently serves as the company's chief legal officer and chief compliance officer. 接下来，让我们有请华为的宋柳平博士。宋博士是华为监事会成员，兼任公司首席法务官和首席合规官。有请宋博。
Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends from the media, hello. Welcome to the Forum on Protecting IP and Driving Innovation. Well, this event is also the launch of Huawei White Paper on Innovation and Intellectual Property. Before I start, I would like to thank Mr. Gary for sharing his expert insight into how intellectual property drives innovation and technological advancement. I want to say thank you to Mr. Gary once again. The pandemic has made 2020 an unprecedented year for all of us. It was an especially turbulent year for Huawei. The US government continued its campaign against us, and a number of government officials continued to spread false information, putting Huawei under the spotlight. Now, more than ever, we believe it's important to communicate more openly. We will address any concerns with hard facts and have opened our doors to journalists, researchers, experts, and government officials from around the world, so you can see who we are with your own eyes. In 2019, when we released our first IP white paper, we outlined our principles and practices in innovation and IP protection, as well as some of our contributions to the industry as a whole. The 2020 white paper focuses on Huawei's IP management prior to 2010. In this paper, we are sharing data and key milestones on Huawei's approach to R&D and innovation since the 1990s. We hope in this very transparent way we can show to everyone how Huawei has achieved what it has been today, step by step. And in future, we will regularly update everyone with the latest progress of Huawei's effort on IP, and also invite everyone to know more about Huawei's practice on innovation and IP protection. As a technology company, respecting and protecting intellectual property is one of the core principles of our business. Huawei is committed to open research and innovation. We welcome integration with advanced technology across the global value chain and rapidly launch products and services with top quality and performance to meet our customers' needs. We invest 10% to 15% of our annual revenue back into R&D. And we have invested more than $90 billion into R&D over the past 10 years. As a result, Huawei ranks number 3 on the latest 2020 EU Industrial R&D Investment Scoreboard. Ongoing focused investment in R&D has made Huawei one of the world's largest patent holders. We are ready and willing to license our patents and technologies worldwide to drive progress in the industry. As a leader in 5G, Huawei follows friend principles when it comes to patent licensing. Today, we will also be announcing our royalty rate for 5G technologies. By doing so, we want to give our industry a more transparent cost structure that will inform their 5G and digital transformation investment decisions moving forward. Our hope is to boost investment confidence and drive rapid adoption of 5G. We protect our own IP and hold the intellectual property of others in the utmost regard. We comply with intellectual rules and norms for IP management and protection, and endeavor to resolve IP disputes amicably through methods like cross-licensing and technical and business partnerships. Over the past year, we've had extensive cross-licensing negotiations with key patent holders in the ICT industry. We've entered into more than 100 patent license and cross-license agreements with major global ICT companies across Europe, the US, Japan, and South Korea. As technology providers, we are all more innovative when working together. We all succeed when working together. Huawei actively shares its own innovations to drive advancements in technology. We embrace open and diverse engagement with academia. We actively explore industry topics with the academic industry, make our research results available to the public. In 2020, we published nearly 600 papers in journals and conferences held by organizations like ACM and IEEE. Huawei is an active member of more than 400 standards organizations, industry alliances, and open source communities, where we work together with our peers to develop mainstream standards. Every year, we submit more than 6,000 contributions to international standards organizations. We continue to increase our contribution to open source communities, building on decades of investment and our capability in software. As always, Huawei is ready and willing to share our technology with the world. Together, we can drive our industry forward and advance technology for all mankind. Thank you.
Much, Dr. Song. Indeed, the level of openness and inclusiveness Huawei has exhibited in the field is truly inspiring. 非常感谢宋博的精彩分享。We'll be hearing more about the IP challenges and prospects facing the world today from our field experts in, as you can see, the panel discussion coming up right now. 那接下来呢是我们的圆桌论坛的环节，我们将会听到更多关于当今世界所面临的知识产权的挑战和前景的分享。The panel will be followed by the release of Huawei's white paper on innovation and IP 2020, as well as its 5G royalty. 在圆桌论坛之后呢，华为将会发布创新和知识产权白皮书2020以及 5G 专利费率。After that, we will close with a 30-minute Q&A session. 那在那之后呢，将是我们的媒体问答环节。So first, our panel discussion. We're so delighted to have Mr. Einar Tangen, Senior Fellow with the Center for China and Globalization, who will be moderating this session. Welcome to join me. 那接下来呢，我们的圆桌讨论，我们非常荣幸的邀请到了中国与全球化中心高级研究员艾纳尔·坦根先生，他将来主持这场圆桌论坛。And the panelists include 论坛的专家成员包括 Joining us online Sir Gurry, former DG of WIPO, 在线加入我们的 WIPO 前总干事 Gurry 先生。Also joining us online from Europe is Dr. Yiden Ying, co-director for the Cambridge Center for Chinese Management. 剑桥中国管理中心联席主任伊登尹博士呢，也将从欧洲接入。Also here in the present with us, Dr. Boy Luthier, Senior Fellow from the Frankfurt Institute of Social Research, 法兰克福社会研究高级研究员吕博义博士，欢迎。From the Huawei side, we have Mr. Jason Ding, Vice President and Head of IP Department, 华为副总裁兼知识产权部部长丁建新先生，欢迎您。And of course, Mr. Carl Song, Vice President of Huawei's Corporate Communications, 华为企业沟通部。副总裁宋凯先生，来，请落座。And now the time for Einar and his guests. 让我们把时间交给艾纳尔和他的嘉宾们。
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Wang. Let's have a round of applause for her very elegant and erudite presentation of us. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Okay, we've heard some very nice opening speeches talking about very complex subjects, white paper, royalty approaches, and also transparency. Now we're going to have a little chat and put some meat to this. We want to talk about this in two terms. One is this innovation in ecosystem. Why are we talking about this? What does it mean? And then second, IP challenges as we go forward. And this is going to involve a little bit of the past, the present, and the future to give you an idea. The past and present of Huawei, but this is about the future of an entire industry and how it affects you and your readers. So let us first begin with Carl Song. You are going to give us a brief on why we are here.
Okay, thank you for your introduction and explanations. Actually, if you still remember, back to 2019 is our first release of our first white paper. Today is our second edition. In that moment, in the first editions, we focus on Huawei IP protection principle, practice, achievement, and contribution for Huawei innovation IP protections. But the timeline is focused on 2010 to 2019, that 10 years. I think very few people in the planet will have any doubt about Huawei capability to do innovation and IP protection issues in the past decades. But the general public probably has very few notion about what's the early stage for Huawei to do innovation, IP protection issues. So this second white paper is focused on the early stage 1990s to 2010, that 20 years, what's happening, the major event, major key innovations, what we made, and even some dispute we have with the industry players. So we will disclose all the facts in that white paper to give the public whole pictures within these two white papers to understand what's happening for Huawei and even Huawei contribution for the whole society. So the second purpose, I think today, a lot of people in the general public, they mentioned, what's IPR matter with me? As ordinary or normal people, They think the IPR is so complex, is for the engineering, for the scientist, even for the lawyer. Nothing business with me. But this notion is wrong, as Mr. Gary mentioned just now. IPR is crucial to innovations. Innovation needs a lot of investment, human resource, and financial resource. Nobody has a willing to continue invest if there is no protections and no reasonable payment to pay back their innovation. Even they take a lot of risk to make innovation. Nobody can make sure the output about you innovate. But innovation is crucial for technology improvement, like the first, second, and third industrial revolutions is driven by the invention about the steam engine, electrification system, and the information technology. Like today, we are into the first industrial revolution is driven by a lot of innovation in IoT, cloud, AI, big data. So each time the technology improvement will shaping and reform our society, even our life. So every person is linked with IP protections. So every person need think about how to protect IP from your side. So this is purpose.
Well, I'm hearing a lot about just how important this is and how technology drives the kind of efficiency that has been pushing us forward. But tell me a little bit about, talk a little bit about the commitment of Huawei, a private company, which is out there and has continued, as you said, through this white paper to be directly involved in pushing these boundaries.
Yes, actually, as Dr. Song mentioned just now, one key reason Huawei succeed till now is we continuously invest very heavily in R&D, minimum 10% from very early stage 1990s to today, last year, minimum 10 to 15% of our revenue is reinvest in that domain. This is why it's a huge amount each year. This is why in the beginning of this year, the EU Industrial R&D Investment Organization ranking Huawei as the #3 globally, just behind Alphabet, Microsoft. I still remember last year, 2019, we are #5. So only 1 year we increased 2 ranking. So we are very proud of what we did. So very heavily invest financially. And even the human resource, we invest more than 53% of our total employee in R&D. That means more than 100,000 R&D guys working dedicated for innovation and for research. So this is somehow we will continue. Inside of this huge project, we split in 2 parts. The first part is around 30%. We focus on fundamental research. Another 70% we are focused on application research. The first part is try to working with scientists, working with professors, collaboration together to push the boundary about our ICT industry and try to break through some theoretical limitations about our industry to try to bring some value for whole humanity, not only for Huawei, if there is some breakthrough. And other 70% is focused on the customer needs and the customer pinpoint, try to solve their issues, try to bring the value to our customers to create the very best quality solutions to our customers. So this is roughly what we did in that domain. We will continue to do very heavily.
Well, profits depend on it, I suppose.
Yeah.
You know, right at this point, I would like to go across to Eden Yin, who is standing by. You see him on the split screen. Eden, how are you?
I'm well, thank you, Heiner.
All right. So, Eden, what challenges have Chinese firms faced becoming global, innovation leaders? Can you give us just a sense of that?
Based on my research, I think Chinese company facing four major challenges. So two of them related to the context of innovation, two of them related to the individual organization's characteristics. So let me go through them one by one. So I think the biggest obstacle for a Chinese company to be a truly global innovator is the weak capability in basic science and research in China. Chinese companies are very good at application-based innovation, but those innovations are mostly incremental. In order to be a truly global innovator, they have to pursue technological breakthrough. So that relies on advancement in basic science. As you know, both in China, both the public sector and private sector has not been investing too much in the basic science for obvious reasons. And if you look at the top university in China, Tsinghua University, I know their business school very well. Some of the best minds actually study at the business school. There's nothing wrong with that, but after they graduate, they go to investment banking, they go to consulting. Very few of them choose to pursue a career in chemistry, math, or physics, because those subjects doesn't bring them enough return. So the Chinese government really have to figure out a mechanism that incentivizes the best and brightest minds in China to get into this field. I think the second problem or challenge Chinese company facing is really directly related to the central theme of this forum, which is protection of intellectual property right. Well, China has been improving a lot, but until today, there's still problems with regard to the protection of intellectual property. That's the reason why many Western multinationals are very reluctant to allocate their core research activity in China for the fear of the infringement. This, in the long run, is going to hurt both Western multinationals and Chinese domestic companies, because without accessing to this core technology provided by Western multinationals in China, how would Chinese upgrade themselves? So that's why this event today is of great importance and significance to China and as a whole. China, or a Chinese company, needs to learn to be a very responsible player in the international IP landscape. Okay. The third challenge, as I say, is really related to the lack of sufficient aspiration for Chinese entrepreneurs. Well, there's a lot of very complex Chinese entrepreneurs, but based on my observation, my research, most of them, we could call them pragmatists. They are very pragmatic. They go for the profitability. They go for the quick money. They go for the low-hanging fruit. But what we need is idealist, a dreamer who actually think big. The founder of Huawei, Mr. Zheng Zhenfei, is one of such a typical dreamers. From the very beginning of Huawei's establishment, he was thinking about becoming the technology leader in the world. Nobody, of course, believed him 30 years ago, but now Huawei, how much Huawei has achieved. So we need dreamers. We need big thinkers. We need blue sky thinking. We need people like not only Mr. Zheng Zhenfei, also we need entrepreneurs like Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, who do not really look at immediate financial return, and they look for long-term vision. They want to check society for better. That's what is currently lacking in China. So last but not the least is, well, everybody knows pursuit technology innovation is great, but it's difficult. As I just mentioned, maybe there's enough number of Chinese companies who want to be a genuine global innovator, but they just don't know how, right? It's a difficult process. So I think what left for Chinese company now is really a very hard battle to fight. As I mentioned, the low-hanging fruit are all snatched up in the past 40 years. So how do you become a genuine innovator globally? Chinese company has been playing the role of catching up in the past 40 years, and they are very accustomed to the role of followers. Whenever the leaders come up with any new technology ideas, they imitate and they make it better and cheaper and faster. That's how they win. But today they have to really get themselves into the uncharted territories. So again, Huawei offers a fantastic example how that can be done. Huawei is gradually becoming a genuine radical innovator. I think a lot of you probably heard about Huawei's 3G, single RAN machine, which combines both 2G, 3G, and 4G in one machine. that machine actually enabled Huawei to leapfrog their Western competitors in the marketplace. So that is considered as a breakthrough innovation. But how that can be done, because Huawei established a very wide international global innovation network. Well, so Huawei know from very early on, they need to tap into the global talent a pool instead of just rely on Chinese engineers and scientists. So I would encourage all Chinese companies really think about having a global mindset, just like Huawei. When they try to pursue innovation, they need to be truly global and work with all the top talents around the world, irrespective of their ethnicity, nationality, just to enable them to achieve their best. And in the process, Chinese company can also learn how to be a genuine innovator. So I think these four challenges is probably the biggest one today, and it takes a good 10 or 20 years for Chinese company to resolve that. But I'm very hopeful at some time they'll be able to get there. Back to you, Anna.
All right. Thank you, Professor Yin. A very impassioned approach to this. I just have one follow-up question, and that is, do you feel that Chinese companies have to work harder in this current environment, that it is more stacked against them because they started off with less IP, now they're actually filing more IP? Is that one of the issues here, is that, you know, if you're a Chinese company, you have to, quote, prove yourself in the world?
Yeah, exactly. I think that's precisely the reason behind this forum. I think there's a lot of biased attitude towards Chinese company as a whole for obvious reasons. So Chinese company needs to send a strong positive signal to the rest of the world. They're actually a responsible player. They are also technologically capable to be a contributor to the global technological development. So they need to get themselves up in the front and then connect with people and communicate with the media. That's how they change the perception. And then absolutely right, they need to work much harder than their Western counterpart, not only just on technology development, but also on PR, on communication, connecting with the audience over.
All right.
I think this is.
I'm going to cut you off right there. I'm going to save a little time for Professor Boyd. He's going to talk a little bit. I was hoping you would talk a little bit as an international expert in this kind of supply chain, and also the not supply chain, industrial supply chain, okay, and a little bit of IoT. So we're kind of moving from the general picture that the professor is giving us. Just talk a little bit about the technical areas on there. So.
Yeah, I mean, thank you for this, for all these spirited contributions. I would like to talk a little bit from the local perspective here, from the Chinese perspective, as I've been based in Guangzhou for many years and doing research on industrial supply chains, both globally and locally here in the Pearl River Delta, and we are based here. I mean, this is one of the most innovative regions today in China, and Shenzhen has really become the city of
in the world.
In the world, yes. And Shenzhen really has become the symbol for this development. But of course, we're still looking at this region here as a manufacturing region, as the world's factory. Where a lot of low and mid-end goods are produced for the consumers of this world. What you see here, and this tells us something about innovation in China, is we have an incredible combination of science-based research and development, as we find it here in Huawei and many other companies. We have the whole scene of start-up internet companies, and now some very large one here. And we have manufacturing of all kinds, which is in itself very differentiated. We have 31 industrial clusters here in the Pearl River Delta on very different things, and we still have a large number of industrial workers, like over 15 million. So this place really is a manufacturing powerhouse of the world. Now, looking at what is the role of Huawei in this context, and what does innovation mean in this context? The report that is being published today is a very instructive piece on not just technology and patents and investment, but on how innovation is made through the combination of many different things. I think this is the most important thing we can learn from this whole story. So this report is very important, does not just talk about smartphones. And the whole discussion of Huawei's role in the world market is pretty much about, in recent weeks, have really been about the role of smartphones and the chips that are needed and the smartphones and who can develop them and manufacturing them. This report talks about networks, about infrastructure, and how to develop infrastructure, and how to find the key areas of innovation that are needed for the next steps of developing infrastructure. And it does a very good job in explaining this in a mostly untechnical way. So I would highly recommend this report to my students.
A little bedtime reading.
Yeah, very good reading, and think about it. What this case tells us, as most of my research and my perspective here is on industrial manufacturing, I just wanted to mention one story from that report. It is about the distributed base station. This is the type of technology that was created by Huawei some 20 years ago when 2G communications became 3G, and Huawei was mostly supplying telecommunications equipment to the countryside here in China. And a lot of learning here in China, as we know, starts in the countryside. And at that time, one of the big issues in expanding telecommunications infrastructure was how to get this new type of telecommunications base station up on a mountain, which may be 1,000 meters high or 2,000 meters high. And China has a lot of these mountains, especially in our countries. And this was a very, very practical problem of how developing things, but it was almost there was almost no solution for this on the existing technology. So the solution that Huawei found, and you can read this in the report, was basically to separate the heavy parts of this piece of equipment from the lighter parts. And the lighter parts are basically the antenna that was put on the top of a mountain, easy to carry, easy to maintain. The heavy part, that's all the switching equipment, and that's the power supply. That would stay at the bottom, maybe in a village or somewhere near the bottom.
And I'm sure the repairmen appreciated that. And let's move on to IoT. I mean, how important is it that if you're having this Internet of Things, that they be connected, that it be uniform?
Well, this is where I want to get at. The IoT, apart from all, especially the industrial Internet of Things, apart from all the technology that goes in it, is also about integrating many, many different things, sometimes in very different environments. Now let's talk about a factory here, somewhere here in the vicinity of Shenzhen that makes some light products like furniture or whatever. They have no manufacturing execution system. They have no enterprise resource planning system, but they have a lot of machines that they could connect through digital technology. In fact, we need a very high-powered infrastructure for this. This is 5G. 5G is widely available now here in China, and it has also been designed as one of the key investment areas for new infrastructure by the Chinese government in the wake of the coronavirus. And now there is a large number of factories out here that are in the process of getting on the cloud. Shangyun is the Chinese word for this, which is a big effort to digitalize manufacturing in many low to medium tech industries without installing the whole range of data centers and digitalized software. And here comes the point: we have to integrate many different things, many different machines, from a low-tech level, high-tech level, and of course we have to integrate it with the existing work practices and how the workers are trained on all this. And this is an essential part of innovation, and I like to look at innovation from this perspective.
Okay. Well, I'm going to cut you off there because I want to get to Jason. Jason, you know, he just brought up this point about the dangers of fragmentation and what that means to the industry. I mean, if I have a cell phone and they have a cell phone, but I can't call them and they can't call me, I don't know what that means. So Huawei has been doing a lot of pioneering work and creating the standards that allow different systems to come together. Can you talk a little bit about the fragmentation?
Fragmentation recently, you know, in our industry, you know, we always use a global unified standard. So which means that we can connect each other, you know, the Huawei's equipments can interoperate with Ericsson equipments and to interoperate with Samsung's device. That is a unified global, you know, standard. Recently, because that you know, some countries want to you know, to divide the supply chain between China and other countries, this you know, brought the risk that fragmentation in the standard. From our view, you know, the standard is a kind of collection of the new technologies. The standardization, it is a process that different researchers, the companies, they selected the new cutting-edge technology to combine with existing technology and to, you know, to recommend the use for the to the industry for use. This is a global, you know, collaboration. You know, if there are, you know, if the different territory, the people use different, you know, standards. Just think about the power supply, you know, the circuits. You know, when you travel to the Europe, you know, travel to the Japan, you know, travel to the America, you know, there are always, you know, different standards. So, but Huawei always call for the global collaboration and the unified, you know, the standard. So for Huawei, what we can do, the only job we can do is investing in R&D and to make our technology more advanced. If your technology is enough advanced and ready to go, some extent that you can overcome the risk of the fragmentation. In the history of our industry, there are some case, there are some you know, example ever happened. Like a different standards, they prefer to select the same technology because that technology is enough good. For example, you know, the most popular technology, you know, 4G and Wi-Fi. Both these two standards based on the OFDM. That's a good example that if you have enough good the technology, you can overcome the fragment of the standard and even the supply chain in the future.
But that hasn't been Huawei's approach. You've put an amazing amount, what, 55% of the standards for 5G were actually developed through Huawei. So you're not going through this, we're going to power our system through approach, are you?
Power?
No, you know, I mean push. You're not going to try to overcome everyone else's system. You're trying to cooperate.
Yes, we try to cooperate. We also call collaboration. You know, you know, we encourage, you know, the researchers and the companies in all of the world, you know, to work together to build the next generation of the standard.
Okay. So, you know, and it's the consumer who's going to pay in the end, either because they can't get to whoever they want, or in particularly because the two systems are more expensive, right? They're not collaborating. So let's talk a little bit about pricing. Now, I know that you are about to do a little report talking about the standards. How is Huawei approaching pricing? All right, you have a collaborative approach, but what's the price? What's the cost to consumers?
No, it's hard to say. Depends on how much you invested for the research and the development for this technology. Sometimes that for our industry, for example, that 5G, we started the research since 2009, and standardization since 2016, and commercialization since last year. This could be start of the 5G. So it takes over 11 years, just build one generation of the mobile technology. So it is a long, heavy investment. But other hand, that when you want to price your technology, you must I believe that you need to consider two elements. One is that whether the revenue. The revenue when you license this technology to the patent user, whether the license fee can reflect the return of those R&D investment. But the other hand, the second element, that you also need to consider the costs of the implementation by the industry. Means that you couldn't set a very excessive high rate, make the implementers couldn't affordable. So that is why Huawei always take a balanced position, to consider the requirements for both sides. We might be the top contributor of the one standards, but that doesn't mean that Huawei will charge the top dollar from the implementer.
Isn't there a sense that there's a longer term play that by creating these synergies, not only are you increasing, adopting collaborative standards, but also increasing the market, because you by people adopting them, by them being cheaper, people have more money, they can buy more things. So there's a long-term play that Huawei is also looking at. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. All right, I want to move quickly across to Sir Francis. How are you, Sir Francis? I hope you've been listening in.
I have indeed, Aina. Very good afternoon to you.
And good afternoon to you. Listen, we're running a little short of time, but could you just give us a couple of 3 or 4 different issues that you see in terms of this whole issue about standards, the challenges that are facing IPR today? We talked a little bit about that, and I'd love for you to just kind of refresh people here on what that means. And this goes beyond your previous speech, but talking about when we said volume and things like this.
Yeah, sure. So thank you very much, Aina. Thank you very much to Huawei, as well as congratulations to Huawei in having the openness to promote this discussion. It's really fantastic. Well, look, I think there are a couple of trends that we see that are persistent trends in IP, intellectual property and innovation. One, as you've mentioned, Aina, is volume. It's extremely popular. So you've got a huge volume of applications around the world, 3.2 million patent applications, 15 million trademark applications, 1.4 million design applications. A second trend is the geographical composition of those applications, those intellectual property applications. Roughly 2/3 are coming out of Asia. Now, this is an extraordinary historical event. Of course, China is a big driver, but it's not just China. So Japan, Korea, India coming along, Southeast Asia. So we've quite an extraordinary shift. What does this mean? Well, it means that there is an intensification of competition. For a long while, the world was just Europe, North America in the world of innovation and IP, with Japan coming in around the 1980s. Now it's a multicultural innovation situation. And that accounts for some of the tensions because, of course, when new people enter into the schoolyard of the big boys and girls, then their tendency is to try to exclude. So it makes very, very difficult. So there is great, I think, intensification of competition as a consequence of this geographical shift. And then the third major thing I think we have is the complexity of the subject. Now that springs from the complexity of the underlying technologies. It produces quite a number of questions. Well, one of the questions is a legal question, that we have complexity and such speed in going forward with the development of new innovations, in our traditional institutional apparatus is left behind. Its capacity to respond to new technological phenomena in the marketplace, you know, it happens at a completely different time cycle to the technological product life cycles, and so we have a gap there. That gap is tending to be filled by the first mover. The first mover comes and says, okay, I will do general data protection regulation, and then because the European market is so large, everyone has to conform their systems to that particular regulation. And so you're getting regulatory competition in the new technologies, I think. And secondly, it's the complexity of the subject matter, and that's been mentioned. Intellectual property is largely a creature of the Industrial Revolution. It applied to physical objects. How is it coping in the digital transformation? Well, there are some people who feel that it's old hat. It's not able to. And what I would say to that is that the data is telling us exactly the opposite. The data is telling us that there has never been any intellectual property applications in the world. The rate of increase in the field of artificial intelligence, for example, of patent applications, far greater than the rate in other fields of technology. So the first thing is it's just not a data-driven observation that intellectual property is not applying to the economy. That said, there is an additional layer coming in, largely concerning data and ownership of data. And that's a very complex problem.
Thank you,
and
Sir Francis.
It brings in
all right, we're having a little bit of a audio technical, and I really appreciate your point that, you know, the volume of intellectual property combined with the complexity, new languages, and the fact that this was a system that was created during the Industrial Revolution, and we are now in the Information Revolution, creates real issues, and I thank you for that contribution. I would now, in the remaining time, open up some questions, if that's possible. Are there any questions? Oh, gentleman right here. Can you identify who you are and what station, what news channel you're with or station?
Good afternoon. I'm Javier Garcia from the Spanish news agency EFE. Maybe a question for Mr. Gary, if the audio problems could be solved, but also for another members of the panel like Jason or Mr. Carlson. I would like to know if the recent investment agreement between the European Union and China will improve the IPR protection procedures between the two sides. And in this regard, after this agreement, what will Huawei precisely do to enhance the collaboration with European companies to protect intellectual property rights? Thank you very much.
Okay. Sir Francis, why don't you take a stab at that, and then we'll have somebody from Huawei. Maybe Carl answered the second part. Sir Francis, did you hear the question? All right, I guess we're having...
Thank you, Ina.
Okay.
I did. Thank you, Ina, and buenas tardes to the questioner. Yes, well, look, I think that when you look at what has happened in China, China has done an extraordinary job in developing an intellectual property infrastructure. So the patent law, the first patent law in China was 1984. Now, 30, 40 years later, it is by far the largest patent office in the world with the largest number of applications. Now, that's not something that can be ignored. And of course, you have a lot of other developments. The strategic emphasis from the leadership on intellectual property and improving performance. And you have specialized intellectual property courts. You have, right across the country, we have to acknowledge that in a very short period of time, it's created a world-class infrastructure. Now you have these accusations and you have these criticisms that are leveled at China for inadequate performance in respect of intellectual property. Well, today's event is a good example of saying, okay, this is what we're doing, and we are making efforts to ensure that we not only, are conforming, but we're leading. So I have a very optimistic view of this. Now, that is not to say that there are not problems. Of course there are, for everyone, because we're concerned with something that lies at the heart of international cooperation and competition. So that is going to generate tension. But my, balance sheet overall would be to say, this is an extraordinary performance that has occurred in a very short period of time.
But,
yes,
Sir Francis, I think the question is, how does the signing of the China-EU trade agreement, will this lead to a better situation?
Oh yes, I think it will, and that's a major event, and it of course refers to these areas that we're talking about, and I think we'll see greater transparency between Chinese companies and the European companies.
Thank you. Carl, would you?
Thank you for your questions. Actually, even before this trade deal made by European Union and China, Huawei consider Europe is very, very important area for our development and research, not only as a market, because in Europe there's so many talents, so many universities, so many professors. So as I mentioned, so for the 30% of our project for the fundamental research, Huawei cannot do alone. We want to collaborate with the top talent, top elite in the world to dig out facing the common humanity problem, like how to break through the ICT boundary, to push the boundary forward, and some limitation in the theoretical limitations. It's not only one company can do, so we rely on a lot of collaborations. One of the example is we moving very fast earlier than this trade deal this year just made it. For example, when I'm a CEO of Huawei in France, in 2013 to 2017, at that 4 years, we create in France, based on their talents and their resource, 4 R&D center, 1 mathematics, 1 chipset, 1 is design, and asset design color design center, and another one is standardization center. So a lot of issue algorithm is holding solved by those 200, currently perhaps there are more mathematicians, French mathematicians working together, collaborate with Russia, with here in Shenzhen to make the breakthrough about, for example, 5G or other problems we are facing.
Carl, you've raised a really important point. Everything we're talking about is human resources. It's all driven. I mean, nothing happens until somebody thinks about, invents it, and does the standardization. Oh. So what are you in essence saying, that what's going to draw people together is the fact that Huawei and other companies must draw the best resources, so that your 200 mathematicians are not the only foreigners you have in your company. So how is that an important part of that, and does that address this issue about how China and the rest of the world, and EU in particular, can work together?
Yes, the talent is a key for innovation and for R&D. You know, even in China, we last year we launched our top talent program for the young graduate top talent. So this is a very famous project here in China. We recruit the top talent, just graduate all around the world, not only in China, to join us, to give the ideas, to give their, to do the research with others together. We think we cannot do everything alone. We must collaborate. So Europe is one of the key area we want to invest. We want to continue to invest to make the technology breakthrough together.
Okay.
Yeah.
If I may, I'll take another question. I was over here. Maybe I'll go over. Young lady in the green shirt here. Can you stand up, tell us your name and your organization?
Okay, so thank you. I'm Shen Weiduo from the Global Times. So my question goes to Jason. So Jason, you've mentioned that Huawei take a really very balanced approach in pricing new technologies. So could you please talk more about that? For example, what standards you use in pricing those new technologies? Thank you.
Jason, the question was to you. How are you putting together your pricing?
Okay, it seems that I needed to answer this question several times today.
Actually, you know, he's going to give a speech right after this, and there'll be another question and answer for that. So maybe we'll move to another question.
Yeah.
Do we have anyone else with a question here? All right. Yeah.
Yeah, I believe.
Go ahead. Please stand up. Identify the organization you're with. Your name.
Hi. My name is Anton Malkin. I'm assistant professor in the Department of Global Studies in the Chinese University of Hong Kong here in Shenzhen. My question is for Boy, Lu Qie, or actually for really anyone that'd like to answer it, because we've talked about standards, and Guangdong is this kind of a very innovative manufacturing province. But when we're talking about, you know, the future of manufacturing, again, panelists brought up the issue of industrial internet, industrial IoT. But so far, when you think about industrial IoT standard setting, it's German companies like Siemens and Bosch and Japanese companies, et cetera, that are really strong in the international standard setting arena in this area. So my question is, do you think there is a future for Chinese firms to set global standards in this area? Or do they even need to have a future here? Or is it for innovation in China, is it fine that they just focus on consumer or other areas of IoT? Thank you.
So, I hand it over to you, Boyd.
Well, I think the short answer is yes.
Okay. Next question. Oh, I'm sorry.
Big role for
no, I'm just kidding.
Chinese companies. And I want to tell you why. Of course, industrial standard setting always has been the domain of the large industrial manufacturing companies of the developed world, and it still is. This is still the case to a large extent, especially everything that's related to industrial machinery, to the digital automation technologies, to industrial equipment. This is really the area for, you know, the traditional big guys in the automation industry business, like Siemens or like General Electric or whatever. But the industrial Internet of Things is mainly is not just about factory automation. That's a very important thing. It is about connecting a diverse and a very large number and a very diverse audience, if you want, of industrial users to the network through all kinds of innovative technologies which are not around yet. Yeah. And the problem is standardization of industrial equipment in the traditional sense always has been a nightmare. Yeah, we have seen, I mean, after 30 or 50 years of digitalization of factories, we see so many different standards out in this world. And the industrial Internet of Things now basically bears the promise that this problem can be solved, or at least partially resolved, from the perspective, from the area of public networks. And that's the important thing. China is developing infrastructure, and the whole approach in China to developing industrial upgrading right now is pretty much about building infrastructure, and we know that China has been very strong in this field, not just in 5G, but in high-speed trains and electricity.
I don't know if you have this answer, but what is the cost of this fragmentation? And this goes to what you were talking about earlier, Jason, this idea that, you know, without, if you had one system, or at least a couple systems that could talk to each other, right, like cell phones, what's the cost of fragmentation?
You cannot say this in figures and numbers, but the cost is slow innovation, slow progress. Yeah.
Okay.
And the cost is that the so-called fourth industrial revolution, Industry 4.0, nowadays is happening much slower than it was expected. And this is where we need integration from the network side, and I think this is the area where China can play a role, and where the industrialized world today can learn from China. It's not just how can Chinese companies learn in the world market.
Anton, is that the answer to your question? Okay, excellent. Does anyone want to say anything more about that? Otherwise, I'll open to one more question. You were scribbling so carefully. I saw you with your notebook there. You must have something to say.
I was scribbling because I'm learning a lot.
Well, first identify who you are.
Christopher Thomas.
And who are you with?
Unaffiliated.
Unaffiliated. Okay.
So the good news is that every government around the world has realized that technology leadership is important for their national progress. And the amount of money just in the last 2 weeks that the US and Chinese government have committed to basic research is truly unbelievable. We don't even have enough scientists in the world that we could pay to do this basic research. However, this also means that with government money and government support, there are strings attached, and that this research should be designed to help a national economy. And this will begin to create barriers between global collaboration, as we have already seen today. If you take a look at the intellectual property regime still remains primarily a national system. There's no supranational body to which you can go to and get relief. So that means if there's a patent dispute of some sort, you have to take it into every national court. There's two problems with this. How do we avoid the national court system just being another forum for great power competition, and that the legal system supports the national strategy of the country, so the foreign companies don't believe we're not getting a fair shake, because our national legal system is designed to support our national strategy, and therefore we're unable to have a view of the facts. And therefore, in every country in which you compete, you have to have this battle. And also, how do we reduce the cost? The court cases here will run into the tens of millions of dollars. Only big companies can fight these battles. They have an enormous advantage. How do we make sure innovative startups and other smaller companies can continue to compete in this incredibly diverse world? Is there a way that we could create a WTO for IPR that would help us create a common uniform system so we could solve some of these problems?
I'm going to assume that's a question for you, Sir Francis. Did you hear it?
I did indeed. So look, thank you very much. This is a fantastic question, and it goes to the heart of what we're talking about. So I'd make a distinction between the public disputes, in inverted commas, and private company disputes. So the WTO mechanism, for example, is a state-state dispute resolution mechanism. What Chris Thomas has just spoken about is very much, I think, also, you know, the life of private enterprises. The fact that you have so many IP rights out there and so many differences in attitude towards what is a fundamental part of cooperation. Now, one answer could be alternative dispute resolution. So if you go to arbitration or you go to mediation, you have a possibility of solving through a single procedure what would otherwise require a multiplicity of national court action, as Chris Thomas has pointed out. And there are institutions around, including one run by WIPO, for this. But they rely on the voluntary consent of the parties. And when you're involved in a dispute that goes to the heart of your competitive advantage, you may not be willing to enter into a consensual dispute resolution procedure. But ADR, alternative dispute resolution, is one possibility. The cost of this, you're quite right. It's exorbitant. It's just absolutely extraordinary. You know, for a startup, you can be put out of business because you cannot pay the fees that are associated with the defense of a patent infringement action. And for example, in the United States of America, to take one example, you know, this will cost you somewhere between $1.5 and $3 million. So it's a real problem that you put your finger on. And I think it requires a multiplicity of policy responses. Insurance schemes are another possibility to underwrite startups. But it is a competitive advantage that giants have against the small players. So, yeah, great question.
Okay. So I'm going to cut it off there. What we've learned today is that there's a white paper that I think if you are interested, you should read. There's going to be an announcement shortly from Jason Ding about the new pricing platform. But what you've hopefully learned and taken away from this today is that innovation is necessary. Standardization is necessary if you want cheap innovation. But the problem is we're facing a world where the existing system of IPR has perhaps lagged behind. And, Chris, I appreciate that, that note, and Sir Francis, your answer. So it's going to be complex going forward. I would like to applaud Huawei for the innovation that they have brought to the world, and hopefully there will be more people who think in that direction and less about making it a conflict. But we know that that's not the issue. So with that, I would like to welcome back onto the stage Ms. Wang, and we will vacate and let Jason give you the big news.
Thank you, Einar. And many thanks to all of our panelists for their very lively discussion. Thank you, gentlemen. 感谢各位嘉宾的精彩的分享哈。And indeed, IP protection serves to drive innovation worldwide, particularly as we stand together in this common fight against COVID-19. I think we can all agree that at this very special time, members from the public sector, the private industry, as well as the civil society must stand together and to innovate together to fight for new engines of growth. And of course, tech companies, innovative companies like Huawei and others have been and will be playing an increasing role in this colossal effort. So next up, let's invite Mr. Jason Ding again to release the Huawei white paper on innovation and IP 2020 and Huawei's 5G royalty rates. 让我们再次有请 Jason Ding.
I'm glad to see so many friends from the media to join today's event. We just had a very engaging and fruitful discussion. Next, I want to take this opportunity to introduce the Huawei's intellectual property white paper 2020. Difference from the white paper we released in 2019. This time we will go into detail on the Huawei's long-term focused R&D investment and the whole history of the innovation, and to see how those innovations makes Huawei what it is today, and how those innovations shaped the technology and the industry as a whole. For 30 years, Huawei has remained committed to investing in innovation. Just as Dr. Song mentioned, we spend 10 to 15% of annual revenue every year, back into the R&D. Here you can see a breakdown of our R&D investment over the past 10 years. Simply say, it has been growing every year. R&D investment is the foundation of the innovation. This is especially true in our industry. We always take over 1 decade, to develop the one new generation of the wireless technology, including the early years research, years of the standardization, and the commercialization always takes some years. This kind of the long heavy investment, R&D investment, makes Huawei become one of the highest R&D investor in the world. Today we have a report from the European Commission, the European Union Investor R&D Investment Scoreboard, and you can see that Huawei ranks on top. This is a comparison, between the R&D investment made by the largest and the most influential companies in the world. But you might not know that Huawei has been this position for years. R&D investment has not only translated into the well-known Huawei's products and the services, and also become a huge, large IP portfolio. By the end of 2020, Huawei held over 100,000 granted patents in 40,000 patent families across the world. Regarding the number of the granted patents in different regions, here we have a report, third-party report, show that in 2019 show that Huawei received the granted patents in ranks number 2 in Europe and the number 10 in the United States. And this is not something that just started recently, even started 5 years ago or 10 years ago, because that the innovation has been at the core of the company since the company was founded from the day one. Patent applications we filed in the late 1990s and early 2000s recorded the innovation activities of what we have at that time. On the top right, the figure shows that how Huawei's patent applications compare with the most important industry peer in the early 2000s. If you look at the numbers, we were in the same level. Difference is that early on, Huawei filed most of our applications only inside China. After 2005, we realized that it's more important to file foreign applications outside China. But no matter we filed the applications inside China or outside China, those are both ways that we share our technologies with the industry. There's one section in this white paper lists the Huawei's R&D and IP protection milestone over the past 3 decades. These milestones give the insight into what we have done and how this fueled the Huawei's growth. This list is quite long, and I will list specifics for you to read by yourself. I just want to highlight some of them. In 1995, Huawei filed the first patent application in China. And in 1999, Huawei filed the first foreign patent application in the United States. 2004, we launched the world's first distributed base station, which is a very innovative product, helped us to enter into the European market. And also, till today, it is still the de facto standard of the wireless base station. Everyone is more familiar with Huawei's consumer business. The 2014 Mate 7 is marked the taking off of the Huawei consumer business. Over the past 30 years, Huawei has remained committed to the open innovation. We respect the IP of others and pay license fee to use their IP according to international rules. You can see that in 2001, that Huawei entered into the license agreement with Qualcomm. And the following the years, 2002, that we entered into the agreement with Ericsson. I believe that Huawei is one of the first Chinese companies to pay the license fee to the Western IP holder. If you remember that in 2014, 2019 white paper that we told you that Huawei began to receive license fee by our own SEP since 2014. So we have a lot of this kind of inbound license, outbound license, and cross license. But this monetary-based license agreement is not the only way we share our technology, with the world. In 2020, we also joined the OIN, the Open Invention Network. This is an IP alliance associated with the open source operation system development. Huawei joined OIN and share our patents free with the developer and the implementers, in this area. So we take this as, another approach to share our technology to the industry, to contribute to the industry. Following the section of the milestone, the white paper also walks through the stories behind several our most important products. Also, some important external collaborations with important industry peers many years ago. For example, Motorola. And also the important merger and acquisition deal, for example, Emerson and 3Com. All those cases shows that the Huawei's innovation capability and the recognition from the industry, in early years. After the years of the hard work, Huawei has been increasingly seen as an innovative brand and industry leader. This is evident by Huawei's successful outbound licensing program. We estimate that the patent licensing revenue from the 2019 to 2020, these 3 years, is around 1.2 billion to 1.3 billion. Because this is just start of the 2021, so it's just an estimation, but I can be sure it will not less than 1.2 billion. Another progress I want to report to you beyond the numbers is that Huawei's outbound licensing program doesn't only stay in the traditional telecom infrastructure and the cell phone industry. We have begun the license in the IoT-based vertical industry. This kind of license can enable more companies, more industries can use Huawei's mobile technology for their self-upgrade. So one example of this IoT vertical industry is the connected vehicles. Speaking of the licensing fee, the 4G isn't something go away soon. But no doubt that the next decade is all about 5G. So as the largest technical contributor to the 5G standard, we believe that licensing should balance the return of the R&D investment and the cost of the implementation by the industry. Now what you are waiting for, today I'd like to announce when license our SEP for the 5G compliant cell phone, Huawei will provide a reasonable percentage royalty rate of the handset selling price and a per unit royalty rate cap at US $2.50. We hope this will give the investor of the 5G a number they can rely on for the cost estimation and the investment decision. Huawei has not only 5G. The final section of this white paper lists some Huawei's top invention in various fields. Top invention reward program started since 2015, and it helps us to build a innovation culture in the company in the daily work. It recognizes and rewards the employees who make the great inventions which can fuel a new product series or a key feature with great the market value. Many of these inventions are incredibly complex and technical. So I just want to pick two of them to show how they benefit the common user. First, 5G uplink, super uplink. Normally, when we watch the movie and the internet, the data is from the internet to the cell phone. That is a downlink. There is less pressure, to the uplink, the opposite direction. However, now people began to use the Livestream apps, which demands much more bandwidth for the uplink and give more pressure to the uplink. And also in the future, more and more industrial internet apps will demand more uplink use, bandwidth. So they need our super uplink, 5G superlink, invention to work properly in the future. This may be complex. So another one is quite simple, that one hop file transfer. Now we have a lot of devices. You may have a photo in your phone and a Word document in your laptop. You want to transfer one to another device. So you just, by our invention, the connection has been established between devices. You just need a simple tap, and then the photo or the document transfer to another device. That could be very easy, for the user to use, the multiple devices. So there are a lot of the top inventions. Some of them are truly ground breaking, but even the white paper can only list some sample of them. That's all for the white paper. Well, before I let you go, I want to take one more minute to share with you our new patent mini site on company's webpage. This is a platform for our clients and partners to explore our patented technologies. The mini site is different with the traditional patent wall. The traditional patent wall only lists the patents one by one. But on this mini site, you can see Huawei's patents are organized into the different portfolio based on their technical fields. Each block represents one portfolio, like 4G, 5G, Wi-Fi, or media codec. Click on one block, you can further see the patents in this portfolio. Click the patent again, you can find the invention abstract, countries filed, and the inventor information. We hope this will give you an easy way to learn about Huawei's extensive innovation in various areas. That's all for my presentation today. We are grateful for the attention that you have paid to the release of this white paper. We will continue to regularly release information like today to enhance the communication between us and you and the general public. If you have any question, you can reach out, contact us, or come to our campus again, to talk with us. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Jason, for that very exciting announcement. 非常感谢丁总的精彩发布。 We are confident that with the announcement of Huawei's 5G royalty rates will help employ new technologies, will help fuel further innovation, benefit the average customer, like Jason mentioned, and bring us closer to the goal of bringing digitization to every organization, every family, and every individual. It's indeed a world that we're looking forward to. So next up is our Q&A session, and I'd like to invite Dr. Song Liuping and Jason once more to the stage for the Q&A session. 好，接下来呢将是我们的媒体访问时间，让我们再次欢迎宋博以及丁建新先生来到我们的舞台上。现场以及我们线上的媒体朋友，如果有问题的话，可以举手向我们示意。Okay, we're going to open the floor for questions. Lady first. 这位女士。
你好，我是21世纪经济报道的记者倪雨晴。我想问一下，就是为什么华为选择在这个时候发布这个5G 的全球费率标准？然后能不能再进一步解释一下您刚刚有提到的这个平衡的具体的意思？好，谢谢。
The question is, why does Huawei decide to announce its global 5G royalty rate? And could you further explain the balanced approach that you described in your speech? Thank you.
那当然，今天发布当然有很多种原因了哈。那个其实最重要的一点是什么呢？就是5G 标准呢，实际上是经过了好多年的制定过程，从2016年的立项到2017年的真正的开始技术讨论，然后到2018年，其实是一整年呢都在做这种技术性的工作，直到2019年才正式的，就是说我们叫做封版或者是正式的公布出来。所以说呢，就是从我们角度来讲呢，就是你这个时候来发布这个。你的5G 的费率标准的时候呢，实际上其实顺便回答你们的问题就是，如果要就是制定你的费率，你大概要了解，就是说，那我在这个标准化过程中，我贡献了我有多少技术贡献，那我的技术贡献占多么大的比重，那么我想这是一个非常重要的这个因素。那么你先翻译。
There are various reasons why we are making the announcement today, and one of them is as follows. As you may know that the standardization process for 5G has taken years. The project was initiated in 2016, and then in 2017 there were intensive technical discussions around it, and the technical work followed up in 2018, and then finally the release was frozen in 2019. So that's one of the reasons why now is the right time for us to make the announcement for 5G royalty rates. Because we have taken into consideration the important factors, and one of them is that in order to set the 5G royalty rate, we have to first of all evaluate how much contribution we have made in the technical efforts in the standardization process.
实际上现在呢，您看从2019年这个标准它这个冻结之后哈，一直到过去这1-2年，其实有很多无论是你自己到这个 ATSI 的这个官方网站上也好，还是说去看这个最近业界发布的一些这个第三方报告也好，他都会来去评述说，那个你华为公司这个有多少个这个技术贡献得到了批准，最后成为了这个提案。当然这个数据是公开的哈，其他公司也有。所以说呢，就是当你有着这些第三方的数据支撑以后呢，就是这当然就是一个很好的一个输入给你。那同时另外一个非常重要的一点就是说，其实大家都公认哈，2020年是这个5G 的元年，然后呢底下这个未来的10年其实就是5G 这个整个5G 被这个产业应用的这么一个时间。所以这个时间点呢，我们认为是一个比较合适的去公布我们对5G 费率的思考的这么一个点。
And as I had described that in 2019, the 5G, one of the 5G releases was frozen. And over the past several years, I think that you can access the information from official websites as well as third-party analyst websites. And you'll be able to see the information such as how much a certain company has contributed to the technical work. And such publicly available information serves as great inputs for us to evaluate when we set up the 5G royalty rate. And it is generally believed that the year 2020 was the first year of 5G massive rollouts. And 10 years from then, we will see more and more adoption of 5G in various industries. And that's another reason why we think that it's the right time for us to announce our 5G royalty rate.
关于设定这个费率标准这个事情，其实我刚才已经说过了哈，就是我们一定会考虑，就是说，那你研发投资的这个它需要回报，那这个和这个那个产业要真正去实施，这个5G 技术它一定要有一个平衡。那对于这个要获得回报一方，那你花了这么长时间，投了这么多人、时间、钱，还有你的这个思考。然后呢，你得到了这个你得到了这样的一些这种知识产权，那么你当然希望说你的回报能够让他们将来继续有动力，对吧？有能力，对吧？再来去做这个新的创新投入，这是一个方面。那另外一个方面就是说，那你当那些其他的这个标准的使用者，当他要应用这个标准生产产品的时候，那不光是你一家要去要去要去这个就是有设定了你的专利费，还有其他很多家。那么最后我们要考虑一下，就是说整个产业它能不能这个真的这个就是付得起这个钱哈，这个是我们也必须要考虑的另外一方面的因素。
With regards to the second part of the question, when we define the 5G royalty rate, we do have to consider two most important factors. One is that we want the 5G royalty rate to allow the innovator to get the returns on the investment that they have made into the R&D. And on the other hand, we also have to think about the cost of implementation. When we say balance, we mean we have to strike a balance between these two factors that we consider in setting the 5G royalty rate. Given the massive amount of investments that have been put into R&D, for example, the human resources, the time you have spent, and the capital investment you have made, a lot has gone into the R&D and innovation. So we need to have a mechanism that should be able to motivate the people working in R&D to further innovate. That's one important consideration. At the same time, we also have to think about the cost of implementation, because looking around, it's not just one patent holder charging the licensing fee. It can be many patent holders. And when the implementer tries to use the licensed patent, they may have to pay the fees to a number of patent holders, and affordability is another factor that we must consider in setting up the royalty rate.
Thank you. Thank you for that answer. Yes, this gentleman.
谢谢彭博的记者。我想问一下二位，就是我们在看到，就是您在公布费率的时候有一个 percentage， 然后还有一个 cap 是2.5美元。想问问二位，就是说我们的这个 percentage 是具体是怎样定下来的？跟同行来说，我们大概在一个怎样的标准？另外就是说，我们这个 percentage 和这个 cap 是全部都一样的，还是说，要根据每一个就是我们的拿到这个patent 的人叫 case by case 的谈，比如说 Apple 或者 Samsung， 他们会拿到怎样的一个费率？谢谢。
The question is about what you showed on the slides. When you talk about the 5G royalty rate, you have actually two items. One is a certain percentage, and the other is the royalty capped at $2.5. So I wonder, how do you define the percentage, and how's your percentage compared to the peers in the industry? Follow-up question is the $2.5 cap applicable to all users, or Huawei will enter into specific case-by-case negotiations with the various parties that you potentially will come across?
这个很好的问题啊，也很挑战。实际上，这个坦率来讲，这个 percentage 并不好定。为什么呢？因为我们现在一款手机，其实大家都能看到，它的价格已经是从200到1000美金这样一个范围了。那未来呢？这个随着 IoT 时代，那这个你想想它，从这个低端的水表啊、电表啊，到这个高端的汽车啊，那这些就是它的整个产品价格范围会很大。所以说，我现在只能告诉你说，这个，只能说这个到时候再根据这个1对1的谈判的时候灵活来确定，对吧？我们肯定会提供一些弹性。但是呢，最重要的就是说，2.5块这个数字，对于手机来讲，这个东西是足够确定的，对吧？
那个我补充一下。因为华为在基本专利的许可上，基本上是，履行的是叫公平合理无歧视的责任。那业界的惯例呢，在于这个移动通信领域里头呢，它是按照净销价的%来收费，然后设一个 cap， 然后我们这个实际上是按照业界的这个方式 来定位我们的。刚才讲了，我们根据研发的成本投入，我们在标准组织中的占比，以及这个我们要鼓励创新，就是更多的公司能够这个比较这个成本付得起的方式来使用这些技术，这样综合因素来考虑的结果。这是第一。第二呢，就是说这个对于每个公司的相互之间的许可问题，其实它业界的这种基本惯例还是互相双边之间的这些谈判，因为它涉及到很多要素，就是还有很多比如说许可交叉许可的问题，这些实际上这个会比较复杂。所以呢，就是在各公司之间，就是按这些关呢，大家有一个统一的标准，这个就是所谓的 friend 的这个义务。然后呢，就最后的这个每个公司之间是按照这种双方专利的交叉许可的情况来综合考虑以后，来得出一个结果的。这也是业界通行的做法，这样。
Thank you.
And it's indeed very difficult to define the percentage. As in our 5G royalty rate, one of the devices is pretty commonplace, so you are able to understand it quite clearly, which is the smartphone. And we all know that the price of smartphones nowadays ranges from 200 to 1,000 US dollars. But for the IoT devices that we will see in the future, it's got a much wider range because the things will include low-end devices such as water meters or electricity meters. It will also involve the high-end automobile. So it's indeed very difficult to define the percentage. And when it comes to the negotiation between companies, we will accommodate the situation and allow certain flexibility. But for smartphones, the analysis is quite clear. A $2.5 cap is applicable to smartphones. To supplement a few points, the licensing of SEPs, the standard essential patents, follows the friend principle, which is something that Huawei insists on. Friend, fair, reasonable, and non-discriminatory principle. And in the industry, you see they normally define the percentage as a percentage of a net sale of a product or service, and then with a cap on the royalty rate. So our approach also follows the industry rules and norms. And when we set the 5G royalty rate, we have considered a number of things, as has been explained, including the R&D investments, the percentage of contribution that we have made to the standardization bodies, how is able to incentivize further innovation, and whether it's affordable to the users. All of these have been considered when we set up the 5G royalty rate. But things may be more complex because when two companies enter into negotiations, they have to think about what approach to take. They will have to think about how the two companies are cross-licensing patents to each other, while at the same time they have to follow the industry principle, which is friend, when they
You are the only participant.
Reach an agreement on the specific licensing approach.
Thank you for that answer. Any more questions from here? Yes, that gentleman.
谢谢主持人。我是彭博商业周刊中文版的记者。彭博新闻社去年在一次报道中说，华为至今拥有全球最多的5G 技术专利。我的问题是，即便美国封杀华为的5G 设备，华为是否可以通过5G 技术专利曲线进入美国市场，从而获益？谢谢。
Last year, Bloomberg reported that Huawei had the most 5G technology patents. Given the context that the US is moving against Huawei by placing a ban on Huawei's 5G equipment, is it a viable approach for Huawei to get into the market through its 5G patents while bypassing the bans on Huawei's 5G equipment?
这个讲几点回应。这个第一呢，就是华为实际上主要还是做经营产品和服务的公司。我们是希望这个我们能够提供最好的产品，最好的服务给全世界的这个客户。 当然，这个现在就是美国有一些禁止性行为，就是我们在那基本上是这个很难销售产品或者提供服务了。这是第一，
First of all, Huawei is a provider of products and services. So our top priority is to provide the best product and services to our customers. Because of the U.S. bans, now it's very difficult for us to provide products or services in the U.S. market.
那我们实际上我们知识产权实际上是它不是对于单独一个国家来看待的，就是我们实际上在申请知识产权的时候，这个我们会进行全球布局，这个包括欧洲、美国、印度等等，就是全世界各个主要的这个国家，我们都会进行知识产权的布局。那么目前呢，我们在美国的授权专利超过1万件以上的这个授权专利，那么这些专利是会给这个美国的产业就是带来价值的。
When we file patent applications, we don't just think about filing patent applications in one country. We actually look at the global landscape. When we file patent applications, we file it in Europe, in the US, and in India, and major countries around the world. And that is when we look at the global landscape when we file the patent applications. Now in the US, Huawei has been granted over 10,000 patents. So the patents that we have been granted in the US are definitely a positive contribution to the US industry.
那么第三点呢，就是华为是5G 专利的主要贡献者，这个持有大量的这个5G 的这个基本专利。按照我们向标准组织的承诺，我们有责任和义务，这个将我们的这些标准的核心专利授权给所有需要使用的这个按照公平、合理、无歧视的原则许可给需要使用的这些实体。那我们其实是并没有区分这个实体是在这个哪个国家，这个美国公司我们也需要许可给美国公司。这个当然，这个美国公司使用我们的专利，其实它也需要付费，所以这是一个业界的这个惯例和法律的要求。所以这个我们想呢，这个活动会继续下去。这个呢，也不是说叫我们不把这个东西称为叫曲线进入啊。这个我们觉得这是一个很自然的逻辑，这样。
Huawei is a major party that has contributed to 5G patents, and Huawei is holding large numbers of 5G SEPs, standard essential patents. Our commitment to the standardization bodies is that we deem it our obligation and responsibility to license the SEPs that we hold to the parties in need under the friend principle. That does not distinguish the home country of these different parties. And if a US company wants to use our patented technology, they have to pay for the patent license. And this is industry norms and rules, and as well as what the laws dictate, and we'll continue to follow such rules and norms. But I don't think this is a way or an approach that we take to bypass or circumvent the US bans on Huawei's 5G equipment.
Thank you. We have time for one more question here, and then we're going to go online. Yes.
Yes, I wonder if it's possible to know how many lawsuits related to IP Huawei was involved in through the last years, and are more the cases Huawei lost or Huawei won? Thank you very much.
Can you tell us again where you're with?
I'm Javier Garcia from the Spanish news agency, EFE. Thank you.
是西班牙的媒体，想请问一下，在过去这几年，华为都遭遇了多少起的 IP 诉讼？那想请问，在这些被起诉的案件当中，华为是胜诉的多还是败诉的多
我想是这样，科技公司之间有知识产权的诉讼，其实这是非常正常的，像这个所有公司都会面临这些问题，特别是在今天有大量的我们叫 NPE 公司存在的情况下，这种诉讼可能更多。这样。
It is common to see IP lawsuits in the technology arena, especially now when there are many companies that is called MPE. IP lawsuits between tech companies is really common.
实际上，华为这个的基本逻辑就是我们更多的绝大部分的这些争议和诉讼，其实都是通过这个和解的方式来解决掉了，所以这个真正诉讼到最后的非常非常少。那我们没有具体统计过数据，但是在我的印象当中，华为在这种大型的科技公司里头，这样的诉讼的算是少的这一类里头的，偏少的这一类里头。
Most of the disputes and lawsuits involving Huawei were settled, and I remember that very few of those cases ended up otherwise. We don't have a tally of the number of cases, but compared to the large tech companies, the number of cases involving Huawei would be one of the fewest in the industry.
Thank you. My colleague says there's time for one more question.
Thank you. Hi, I'm David Curtin with Reuters. Your slides say, the slides list IoT and connected vehicles as core IP domains for Huawei, along with traditional areas of your business like telecoms infrastructure and consumer electronics. As Jason mentioned earlier, the kind of research that leads to patents is expensive. Mr. Ren told us in February that the push into new areas of tech would offset the hit that Huawei has inevitably taken to its consumer handset business. What share of Huawei's R&D investment is going into IoT and vehicles? And what does that listing as a core IP area tell us about the company's priorities in the future? Thank you.
在您的 PPT 当中，我们看到物联网和车联网属于华为的核心 IP 领域。那么华为传统的电信基础设施以及消费者领域呢，也是同属于华为的最重要的这些 IP 领域。那么像您也说到了，这一些专利的研发投入是非常昂贵的。那么在2月份的时候，我们也听到华为任先生说，要通过对这个技术的投入，然后要减轻消费者业务、手机上业务的这个压力。那么我想请问，在在这个 IoT 物联网以及这个车的领域，华为做了多少的研发投入？那么这一些投入是否是暗示着未来华为核心的业务领域方向？
我们这个因为华为公司的这个产品线确实很宽哈，从电信、手机、云、企业，刚才您说的车这些。实际上，华为公司，我确实没办法在今天给你提供一个具体的数据，在这个具体领域。但是有一点哈，就是华为本身，至少我们现在我们是不造车的，我们更多的是把我们的比如说5G 技术，甚至于说未来现在一些其他的技术，用来呢去使能这个汽车的领域，让这些汽车能够变成越来越智能，能够联网，对吧？能够自动驾驶，对吧？能够有更多的这个好的消费者体验的一个新的车。当然，我愿意跟车企一块儿去挣钱哈。所以说抱歉哈，不能回答你的这个数据，因为没有我手里没有这个数字。
Indeed, Huawei has a broad range of product lines. We've got telecommunication infrastructure, we've got smartphones, cloud services, enterprise business. We also provide automobile solutions. But I'm sorry that I don't have the number at hand to address your question, how much your investment in R&D in those domains. But one thing that I can articulate is that Huawei does not make cars. What we do is to provide the enabling technologies for the car makers, the OEMs, so that they can produce smarter and better connected cars that can potentially fulfill autonomous driving, that can deliver much better user experience. And the enabling technologies that we can provide include 5G technology and others. So we are like sharing our technologies with the car makers, and then we share the benefits together. I'm sorry that I don't have the number at hand to address your question.
Okay, we're now going to turn to our journalists who have been waiting so patiently online. 那接下来我们把这个提问的机会交到我们线上的媒体的手中。And a kind reminder, if possible, if you're asking the question, can you please turn on the video cam so we can all see your faces over here? Okay, I think we have a question from CNBC. 那首先让我们来听一下来自 CNBC 的这位记者朋友的问题。
Yes, Arjun here from CNBC. Thanks so much for taking my question. I just wanted to know, are you expecting to derive more revenue from 5G royalties than you did in the 4G era? And just tacked onto that, how much are you thinking about 5G royalties as a key revenue stream going forward as some of the other businesses like the handset business suffer a lot of pressure? Thank you.
我这个问题是关于5G 的费率的。那请问您预计华为从这个5G 专利许可费上获得的收入会比4G 专利许可费获得的收入更多吗？那么您预计在未来5G 的专利许可费是否会成为华为的一个更重要的收入来源？这样从而减轻像手机等业务遇到的收入压力。
那个。华为的整个经营战略，我们主要还是一个经营产品的公司，所以华为公司的主要的收入来源还是在于我们提供这个优质的产品和服务，就是产品经营这一块会是我们长期的收入的主要的来源。那么这个在知识产权方面的这个华为其实没有把它作为一个特别重要的收入的来源来对待的这个方式，就是跟公司整个收入相比来看，这样。
In Huawei's business strategy, we position our company as one that provides products and services. So our major source of revenue comes from our provision of high-quality products and services. That will remain our long-term position in our business strategy. Regarding IP, we don't position IP as a major source of revenue. If you compare the revenues from IP against our total revenue, you see our position quite clearly.
第二点呢，就是你刚才提到的关于4G 和5G，因为这个4G 和5G，华为整个的投入的这个金额和投入的时间是有所区别的。我们在对于4G 的标准的贡献和5G 的标准的贡献，会有所不一样。所以呢，就是说我们会根据这些变化来调整我们对外许可的政策，包括费率这个情况，这样。
Your question touched upon 5G and 4G royalty revenues. Given the fact that our investments in 4G and 5G differ, including the time and the capital investment that we put into the different generations of technology, given the fact that our contribution in 4G standards and 5G standards varied, when we set the royalty rates for different generations of wireless technologies, we'll factor in those discrepancies and then accommodate to the investments and the contribution, and then define a reasonable rates.
Okay, thank you for that answer. And next we have Securities Times, who is joining us online as well. 接下来呢，这个问题来自证券时报的记者朋友，也是在线上的。
你好，我是证券时报记者严翠。然后我想问一下，是目前华为申请的这个5G 相关知识产权专利，是否对国内的运营商等公司有相关的政策？另外一个就是说，对于5G 的发展和推进有何作用？就是这些5G 相关的知识产权专利。谢谢。
就是第一呢，就是我们这些5G 的这些技术贡献给国际标准以后，成为国际标准的组成部分，那么这些专利会变成国际标准的基本专利，那就会 这个运用到这个全球所有的这个运营商的网络上面，这是第一。第二呢，就是说，所以这些技术都会给这个产业整个产业会带来价值。然后第二呢，就是说按专利收费的这个实际上它是就是整个专利许可这个行业呢，就是比较多的是为产品的用户来收取费用，当然也会也有这个向运营商收费的这种情况，就是这种情况，但总的来讲更多的是产品公司之间在进行专利许可、交叉许可。当然如果产品公司解决了这些许可交叉许可的以后，实际上这些许可就会顺延到运营商，所以就不需要再进行第二次收费了，是这样。所以现在的更多的许可是在产品和设备公司之间进行这种许可和交叉许可这样。
The question is, given the number of 5G patents filed by Huawei, how are they going to impact the telecom operators in China or encourage 5G adoption? And the answer is as follows. We contribute our 5G technologies to global standards organizations, and then if they are accepted, then it will be our patents will be described as standard essential patents because they've been incorporated in the standards by the standards organizations. And after that, the technologies will be implemented in the telecom operators networks worldwide. In sum, our technology is of great value to the whole industry in this way. Regarding the patent licensing fee, normally patent licensing happens between the product or the product companies and the vendors. So they address the patent licensing issues between themselves, and then it's hardly the case that the telecom operators will have to pay for the patent licensing fee, because after the product companies and vendors have paid for the use of the patent, then it's addressed. It won't trigger a second payment that is borne by the telecom operators.
这里我稍微补充一点哈，就是实际上在这个欧洲啊、美国啊，就是这个就是向运营商主张权利的情况，其实也不算少见。当然比起来那个大量的消费电子公司，这个遇到知识产权纠纷的情况会少一点，但是其实总体来就是也有不少。那么其实我自己有很多运营商的朋友哈，他们其实也有时候会咨询一些关于就是说我运营商被别人就是遇到说寻求这个专利方面的一些比如说主张啊，也经常会遇到。所以说呢，我们应该来讲就是说就是无论咱们是运营商还是设备商，当我们遇到这种知识产权的这种纠纷的时候，都要用一个比较正常的心态来看哈。
If you look at Europe and the US, you will see there are also cases where the telecom operators are claiming rights. Compared to the number of cases in the consumer industry, those claims filed by carriers would be fewer, but there are cases where the telecom operators are claiming rights. And one carrier friend talked to me about how they claim for their rights. So I think that be it a telecom operator or a product company or a vendor, I think that they should also approach this kind of cases with a sober mind.
华为跟许多运营商也有这些许可和交叉许可的这些谈判和合同，也有许多。所以在这方面呢，华为是采取开放的态度，这样。
Huawei is also engaged in cross-licensing discussions and licensing discussions with companies, including the telcos. So there are cases like this as well. We stay open when we get into those engagements.
Thank you. We have time for one more question. CIO Mag, who's joining us online. 好，现在还有时间，留最后一个问题。
Hello. Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Please.
Thank you for taking my question. So I am Zakaria from Siam Mag, an African publication specialized in innovation, and I have two questions. First one concerns Huawei's adhesion to a friend principle, fair, reasonable, and non-discriminatory. So given Huawei's position and as a worldwide innovation leader, in which way will this concretely help the innovation industry worldwide? And my second question regards Africa, where many analysts describe slow but sure progress on the governmental agendas in terms of innovation and IPR challenges. So what are Huawei's suggestions to improve the IPR legal framework in African countries? And thank you.
我是非洲的创新媒体的记者，我有2个问题。第一个是关于华为刚刚提到的要遵从FRIEND 原则。那么想请问一下，华为作为在全球创新领域的领先者，如何遵从这个原则，然后帮助这整个的创新产业？那第二个问题呢，就是关乎非洲各国在非洲各国的政府在创新以及克服 IPR 挑战方面的这个缓慢的进展的现状。我想请问华为对于非洲各国政府有什么建议？他们应该如何不断地改进自身的 IPR 框架？
第一呢，正如您刚才讲的这样，第一个问题就是我们对 IPR 的许可政策，我们必须要遵守这个国际的这个通行的这个 FRIEND 的这个基本原则，所以我们并不会区分这个交叉许可或者许可的对象的来源是哪个国家哪个地区，我们统一都按照 FRIEND 的原则来进行处理这些IPR 的相关的许可问题，这样。
With regards to the first question, the FRIEND principle, the internationally accepted rule, is very essential in IPR licensing arrangements. And when Huawei licenses or cross-licenses its patented technology to other parties, we don't distinguish their home country. We always follow the FRIEND principle in our licensing and cross-licensing arrangements.
第二，对于这个华为是一个领先的这种科技公司，我们这个也有相应的这种企业的文化和社会的责任。那么我们实际上跟非洲有大量的合作，就是我们提供最好的产品和服务，这个让非洲呢的这个消费者能够迅速得到可以负担得起的通信的这个优质的这个服务。来这个消除数字鸿沟，然后华为现在就是我们实际上是为全球超过这个1/3以上的人口提供了这些连接和服务，因为实际上这些服务对于整个提升这个欧洲的这个非洲的这个相关的这个通信的这个基础保障。人们丰富人们之间的沟通会有和连接会有提供非常大的价值。
As one of the leading technology company in the world, and it is in Huawei's corporate culture, and also it's part of Huawei's corporate social responsibility to provide high quality products and services to consumers at an affordable price. That includes our practice in Africa. In Africa, we've got extensive partnerships in which we provide the best products and services to the customers at an affordable price. We helped bridge the digital divide in Africa. At the moment, Huawei is serving almost 1/3 of the global population with our connectivity solutions and services. We have helped delivered communications assurance services and enrich people's communication and lives.
第三个呢，我们也在非洲本地建立一些这个合作，跟本地政府一些合作，包括这个为他们提供一些培训，提供一些这种合作项目，然后使得包括我们的服务各种产品的服务，然后包括人员的这种能力的提升。 实际上我们也做了许多这样的工作，我们觉得这样的帮助本地来提高他的本地人员的这些技术的能力，然后也包括这种创新能力的这种人才，可能是最关键的问题。我们也愿意继续这个跟非洲的相关这个国家合作，来继续提供这样的一些这种合作。
We are also partnering with the local level governments in Africa. For example, we have been working with each other to deliver training to the people. And we also provide the technical services for the products that Huawei helped deployed, and we facilitated the capability building process in the localities. And these are just some of the examples that for the kind of partnerships that we have been working with the local governments in Africa. And we think that the shortage of technical know-how and capabilities would be one of the key problems that Africa may have to address. And we are willing to continue with this kind of partnerships and help Africa to build up the technical know-how and train more talent so that it's able to tap into innovation and technologies.
Thank you so much. Because of time, we have to wrap up our Q&A session now. 由于时间的关系，我们的问答部分就到这里了。再次感谢宋博，感谢Jason. Thank you, Dr. Song. Thank you, Jason. Please be seated. And thank you to all of our journalists, both here and online, for participating. And with that, we come to the end of our forum today on innovation, on intellectual property prospects. And it's incredible. We're surrounded by so much birdsong. If you have any more questions, please do not hesitate to contact us. We do hope to see you soon. And thank you once more for joining us today. 那至此呢，我们今天的论坛关于创新、关于知识产权保护，就在鸟语花香当中已经临近尾声了。再一次感谢各位的参与，我们很快再见，谢谢大家，再见。